Laura Bellamy. I'm the Director of Content Strategy and Operations at VMware. And to let you know a little bit about VMware, if you're not familiar with our company, we have about 22,000 employees. We focus on virtualization and cloud infrastructure solutions. I used to run the technical writing team at VMware, so we have about 120 technical writers across 5 primary geos. But now my job as content strategy is actually to focus cross-divisionally on content solutions. So you can see up here on the slide, this is our mission and our charter. And just like the 3 Gs, we have 3 Es. We like to enable, empower, and enrich. What I want to talk to you about today is how Acrolinx fits into this, not only across all 3 of these goals, but how it really fits into our strategy to take best practices from our technical writing organization and to scale them across the business, to focus on cross-divisional content challenges and solutions. So there's also 2 kinds of presentations. There's presentations that are inspirational and they motivate change, or there are presentations that are very practical and they show you a solution. And the worst kind of presentation is they show you something that has been amazingly impactful to the business and then they never tell you how they did it. So I'm going to tell you how we did it. I'm going to actually share with you some of our actual production data from VMware that shows how we've been able to implement Acrolinx across our business. And I'm going to advise you guys about what you can do within your own organizations to put Acrolinx a better value for your own content solutions. So to start off with is the need for change, right? All change is motivated by a problem, and my problems are going to be very similar to your problems. Let me build them out for you. When we looked at our historical editorial process, we had 5 editors trying to cover the entire scope of content at VMware, our technical documentation. And it just wasn't working. When we took a look at the data, our human editors were actually covering less than 1% of our content. There was just no way that was a scalable solution for us if we wanted to be able to have, an insight into the quality across the enterprise. Our cycle times were shortening. You heard about Agile and Scrum. We were going to 6-week cycles, 4-week cycles. Now today, our average is about 2-week cycles, and we even have products that deploy twice a day. We need to evolve our editorial processes so they can keep up with those cycle times. We also have writer volatility, and I don't even mean attrition, people leaving your organization. It could be positive things that cause volatility, like mergers and acquisitions, right? You acquire a new company and a writing team. Maybe it's growth in divisions. New teams are starting to use your tool chain or your standards. It could also be contractors that are temporary workers. But all of that means you're going to have a lot of volatility in trying to train and onboard those content developers to your standards. One of the new people that we onboarded recently is our SME authors, so our subject matter experts. We have about 80 engineers who contribute supplemental content to the product documentation toolchain. And the truth is they don't care about your style guide. They don't think it's their job to learn it. They think that's a different domain. They actually probably don't even want to be writing the content. They were told as their business job that maybe they had to. So trying to onboard them to your style guide and make them pay attention to things that you know are important for, localization savings and consistency are not things that they're probably going to want to pay attention to. We also, as I mentioned, had 5 geos, and a lot of those are non-native speakers. And as you probably have this challenge too, there's quality issues. We wanted to find out ways to be proactive in managing those so we can continue to expand in those geos. Now we have about 50% of our content developers are actually outside of the United States. No quantitative way of getting KPIs. If you're like me, I often have to stand in front of business leaders and justify my existence. And if you want to be given more money to do what you do, you need to have data that shows you're doing a good job. And it's one thing to say, but here's our process, here's all our standards, here's all our content guidelines that says we're doing a good job. I promise you those VPs, those general managers, those business leaders, they want to see it reduced to a number or a green dot with a positive trend line. So I need to figure out a way to get a quantitative way to report our quality. All of that needs to also be in real time. When you take a look at quality, often it's related to a release cycle. What did you do for the last release? What did you do last quarter? What did you do last year? But your business and leaders want to know, what are you doing now? What does it look like today? What are the business decisions we need to make right now in the middle of the cycle to adjust what we're doing, or where are resources being spent to provide better value for the business? So we needed a way to get real-time data and insights into our quality. And then the last one is, terminology is a living document. Your rules, your standards, your guidelines are always changing and evolving. In our historical process, it was some artifact where we'd get a bunch of editors in the room and then we'd bless it. Like, those are the style guides. Those are the approved terminology. Here's the glossary. And then we'd expect people to memorize it and implement it. And it was just constantly out of date. So we needed to have a way to evolve our editorial process to accept it's a living document that's going to be constantly changing and evolving as our business changes. So those problems are probably your problems as well. But hopefully these solutions are going to be the solutions you're thinking of in your own business as well. Our number one problem was scalability. Our temptation was to go to a technical decision, but we actually paused and said, let's go with what we're trying to accomplish first. And scalability was on the top of the list. As I mentioned, we had 433 releases a year. I support 93 products across the business. So I need a way to implement tooling, technology, processes, KPIs, metrics that are scalable across what I have today in the business, as well as what I know we're going to evolve and grow towards tomorrow. So with that scalability, where we are in our Acrolinx situation today is we use automation to ensure scalability. And that's relying on the Acrolinx API. The API is fundamental to our strategy of taking advantage of Acrolinx. We do have teams that use the client integration. They use the sidebar to run scans. But actually, the sidebar is secondary for us. The API is the critical linchpin to the success of our scalable solution. And you can see from here, I now have 4 teams that use Acrolinx across the enterprise. That's our product documentation team, our knowledge-based team. We use it on our UI strings throughout our products, and then our technical marketing teams. Through that, I can support 10 different business units. That gives a consistency for all those general managers that they have the same kind of data they're seeing, the same kind of KPIs we're able to report, and we're even able to compare them against other business units. And I'll tell you, those GMs get pretty competitive too. If they see that they don't have the highest quality score, all of a sudden they want to give me more resources and more attention to make sure they can correct that quality score. I grabbed our 2017 data. This isn't our 2018 data, and since then we continue to onboard more and more. But you can see just the volume of scans we're able to do, of checks we're able to have, and the volume of content, even per day. So the way we do that is in a few different ways through the API. I'm going to tell you about all the different steps and through the authoring process where we run a check. The first one is on check-in. When a writer, an SME, a technical writer, a string developer creates content and they check it into the repository, we kick off and automate a scan. Doesn't rely on any human to actually trigger that event. It's an automated function. We record that score ourselves into our database. The next time as they're moving through this cycle, they might publish that content. They might compile it. Are you compiling it into the product as part of the UI? Are you building a PDF? Are you building HTML? What's your output that you're compiling? We automate a scan at that point too, as part of the publishing process to say, what is the quality of this deliverable, this package that has been produced? And then the last time we automate the scan is on publishing. When does it go live? When is it deployed through whatever channel it happens to be deployed through, so that we get that accurate view? What does it look like to the customers? Again, I'm not interested in the writers throughout their editorial process. Maybe they're just drafting something. Maybe they're playing around. Maybe they're experimenting. Maybe it hasn't been technically reviewed yet. I want to watch the evolution of that quality, but what's really important to me is seeing the production-facing value, right? What does that quality look like to customers? That's why that production level check is very important to us. So our next challenge and solution was really related to data collection, reporting, and transparency. And in addition to some of the other benefits I've told you about being able to report the data, one of the big ones that was given to us from our head of R&D was we wanted to see not CSAT, but PSAT, product satisfaction. For all of our 93 products across 260 versions, what is the product satisfaction for that exact product piece, for all the content that was in that particular shipment that went to customers? So we needed a data mechanism as a way to measure the quality. So now I can measure quality at a business unit level. I can measure quality for types, for UI strings versus product documentation versus KBs. I can measure it product A version 1, product A version 2, or product B version 1. The ability to slice and dice data according to our business reporting needs was fundamental to our ability to prove we're doing a good job for those general managers, but also a way to seek additional resources and additional funding to highlight quality problems and to say, you know, here's the differences we're seeing across our products or our business units so we can best focus those resources. The transparency of the data was also very important to us. These little thumbnails you're seeing here are actually our dashboards. They're live dashboards. They read real-time data as far as the scans that are going on throughout the system, and they're transparently available to anyone in the company. So, you know, we always say, you know, to put data to action, to be able to make a decision based on it, sunshine is sometimes the best medicine. And so that transparent data was really important to us for us to be able to highlight and have a conversation about the quality throughout the content so we could all be on the same page and aligned so we can address those problems together. The last goal we said was the speeding that cycle time. And the automation indeed speeds our cycle time as far as the editorial process goes. It ensures, Acrolinx ensures we have a minimum level of quality verified before content goes out the door. So that does help us in emergency situations or those quick releases where you just need to write it today, publish it by the afternoon. Everything's gone through an Acrolinx scan before it's published and it's out the door. But I want to highlight to you another business value of Acrolinx that really has helped us to speed cycle time. And that's thinking of Acrolinx as a risk management tool, not as an editorial tool, not as a quality tool. And this is one of the reports we use to have that risk conversation. So we can run this report. This is our low quality report, and you can run it on a publication. You can run it on any set of documentation you want. And what it highlights is the lowest scoring content that's below what our quality threshold is. And we own that threshold. We set that baseline based on different kinds of content, different maturity for our product levels. So this allows the team to say, wow, I don't need to focus as a writer my time on moving something from a 79 to an 83. That is not of significant business value to me. And you know, we indeed have a leaderboard. We track all the metrics of the Acrolinx too. And on our leaderboard, it was exponential in the usage of people, right? We have, you know, your people who run the regular scans as part of the business process. And then our top 10% were running hundreds of scans a day. And they were trying to move that needle up, right? To that 80, to that 85, to that 90. But the business return on that investment for the content quality is very low compared to focusing your time on moving a 50 to a 75 even, a 50 to a 90. That is a significant business value for our localization, for customer clarity, you know, for enabling better customer support. So this report has really helped us to focus our resources and our attention on improving the content quality where it will have the most impact. I also use this report a lot to talk to business leaders. You know, if you go in talking about Acrolinx across the division as an editorial tool, people think it's related to word choice and it's related to grammar, and they might not be interested in that. If you talk to them about a risk management tool to say, here's a way to identify our lowest performing content, I can do that for you right now. I can focus the resources in your business unit on improving that. That's something that speaks to general managers and business leaders very strongly. So that's really helped us, not the automation to speed our editorial process, but being able to look at what kinds of content we need to focus on has best enabled our resources to improve the content quality within those tight cycle times where we know we won't have the opportunity to focus on everything. The business outcome of that, as far as a business goes, is we used to have 4 editors. I now have 1 Acrolinx program manager. That isn't to say you should lay off all your editors. You could if you're trying to self-fund initiatives. You know, maybe you got to fund additional licenses or something. But you could better use those resources. As I said, our failing was in trying to have our editors cover the entire scope of content. That was obviously set up for failure from the beginning. This enabled us to take our editors and say, one of those editors is now our Acrolinx program manager, and they lead it for the enterprise. But maybe you could say you want to focus your editors on taxonomy, on classification. Maybe you want to focus them on technical edits. Maybe you want to focus them on making better writers, right? What is the training and your onboarding process for your technical writing team? I think there's a lot of ways you could use those editors in your enterprise once you're able to free them up from trying to cover that scale or trying to cover copy editing or trying to do a minimum level of verification of content quality. We also do stakeholder scans of all of our tools. And these 2 data points are from last year's stakeholder scans, so we're trying to obviously make improvements in that area. But 73% of the users of our Acrolinx tool said that they do think it improves the content quality. And 60% said they think it improves their ability to efficiently produce content. I will tell you a lot of the feedback about why we didn't get higher numbers for that was related to, well, I hate the false flags. Those are annoying to me. And then sometimes the missing guidance. Well, you told me it was wrong, but you didn't tell me how to fix it. So, that's on us. That's on me. That's on, maybe those 4 additional editors, right, can come over and focus on, that living document of removing the false flags and monitoring the data. What are your top 50 flags? Are they of value or not? Should you turn them on or off? For your top 50 flags, what is the guidance you're providing? Could that be improved so your teams are more efficient in taking action on that guidance, right? So those are some things we're taking a look at this year and see if we can improve those numbers even further. What I have today, because I have that API that we use, is I offer to our enterprise Acrolinx as a quality service. So I'm the central point of contact for Acrolinx at the entire company. I support all business units that use the tool. And I'll tell you, for the most part, they don't know it's Acrolinx underneath the covers. They think it's Laura's quality service. Which is nice because I'm a control freak. So I like being the central point of contact, and I like being able to ensure consistency of terminology, of language, of guidance across the enterprise. And here shows you where we've been able to scale out that service across our enterprise. So you'd see in the middle we have our core Acrolinx stack, and we use the dashboards. I showed you a few examples of that for the reporting. But we also use the API to integrate it into several different repositories. And I think you heard this morning, several people acknowledge you will never solve repository sprawl. You won't. And actually, it's something we've accepted, and we move past it. So I score the product doc database, which is a component content management system. I score string repos. That could be Git, that could be Force, whatever your string repository is. We score our KBs, that's Salesforce for us, used to be Zendesk, right? We have integrations across all those repositories, and to me, I actually don't care what your tool of choice is. Different business leaders own those repositories, and they have good reasons for choosing that particular technology stack. I'm not trying to change them or align them. I'm only trying to make them take advantage of my quality service. And so we've lowered the bar enough that it takes us about 2 weeks per integration to integrate our service into their production environment so we can do some scans. In addition, we're trying to stand up a self-service site. You might also have the situation where teams approach you and say, hey, I just have this one paper. Can your team edit this one paper? Hey, we just have this one conference coming up. Can your writers take a look at these PowerPoint presentations? There's always one thing, there's always one team, and across the enterprise it actually makes up a lot of content. So we've stood up a self-service site where people can upload PowerPoints or Word files. And again, we use the API to scan that content, provide them back a report. That's just a way, again, efficiencies, quality, consistency of voice across our enterprise, but it doesn't cost our writing teams anything to do that. We take advantage of technology and best practices that already exist at the corporation. So I'm going to show you briefly our SDK that we created to enable the integration. I mentioned it was 2 weeks per integration as we go approach these different enterprise teams and these technology teams. Well, what it really has helped us to do too is to have the conversation about the cost. We have the SDK because they go, what will it cost me? What will it cost me, Laura? And I say, it costs you nothing but your engineering team's time to partner with me on the integration. People love hearing what you'll do for them for free. So that has been a great way for us to go across the enterprise and say, we're offering this as a solution to you. Also, I think you're going to hear about, hopefully maybe tomorrow, is the evolution of the REST API. I've been talking a lot about the API, and I know the Acrolinx team has been thinking about that as well. When we built this SDK about a year ago, but I think the API has significantly matured since then. And so, hopefully you guys all think about ways to take advantage of that into your enterprise as well. Ultimately, by using the API, we can read data across all different levels, not only data that's necessarily stored out of Acrolinx. We read data all the way up from the XML level into our component content management system, and then back into our own database so we can structure those reports as we want. That reporting agility, that speed of integration, and also the processing efficiency means we performance tested it. We can score up to 40,000 topics a day. So that's huge for us if we ever do, massive mergers and acquisitions. Have you ever acquired something that has 10,000 pages of content? And the first task you're given is you have 2 weeks, paint them, get them up to speed, integrate them, and you take a look at that and say, I don't know what the repository is, I don't know what the source format is, I don't know who wrote it, of course it doesn't adhere to our style. We're able to quickly process all of that content and say, well, here's what we saw. Since we're still in the mergers and acquisition talk, here's what we're gonna need to bring this up to our quality standards. And that could be time, you're asking for a scope. It also could be resources, right? It instantly gives us insight into that content quality so we can start having a conversation about what it would take to improve such massive volumes of content. For our reporting, because someone had said they want, I think Workday team, you want to better enable insights for your authors. That's important for us too. I talk a lot about the data and how I use it to talk to executives and to business leaders, but of course we want that data to empower our teams to make best decisions when they're in the middle of their release cycles for their own content. So in addition to the reporting that we have in Tableau reports and dashboards for the business leaders, we also have reports for authors that they can trigger as a publish event. Anytime they're publishing a PDF or HTML, they can get a quality report that will show them the quality score of everything in their particular publication. The way I like to use that report is for understanding the quality of an entire scope of publication, including legacy content. If you're like me, maybe you've had authors who've said, well, I edited all of the new topics I created. I edited all the changed topics I created, but maybe 50% of your deliverable is legacy content that you're carrying from release to release. And it's not that we expect writers to go back and rewrite everything, but I do expect the writers to own the deliverable end to end. Customers don't know what is legacy content or not. They only know what they see for that particular version you've deployed. This report allows us to really highlight to those writers, not with blame, to say, I know this isn't your fault. I know you didn't write this content, but you own it now. And here's the current state of quality for your deliverable. How can you best take action to solve that in this release? And that shifts the focus, right? Maybe they were going to make resourcing decisions to focus on documenting a few additional features. But now they've looked at their quality report and they've said, wow, that stuff that was written 2 years ago by so-and-so writer who left the company is really poor. I need to focus on that as a best way to improve quality rather than document something else, right? That might be empowering them to make a resource decision for that particular release. I highlight this slide in case you're thinking about approaching other teams and what your strategy might be to get them on board with your Acrolinx implementation as well. If you're wanting to approach your technical marketing or your education team. And I highlight it to also to kind of flip the traditional 3Gs. And I think Andrew said this today too in his active content governance, a kind of change in the model. When we were originally thinking about Acrolinx, we'd approach it as the one-off integration. How can I integrate it into Madcap Flare? How can I integrate it into FrameMaker? How can I integrate it into Word or PowerPoint? It was an application level integration. And we don't do that at all anymore, right? That's where I think people get lost in the technical weeds and they go, well, I don't want you to integrate into Salesforce. How are you gonna do it? And they instantly go down a technical rat hole. Our approach now is we start with the goals. What are your quality goals and what is your current state? And I tell them, why don't you give me a dump of your content, I'll run it through our service, and I'll come back to you in a week with a report. And I show them the report. Here's what I found in your current scope of content quality. Here's the areas I think you should focus on. And that really builds their awareness about what the tool can do for them and what their current state of quality is. Only then do we move to things like, okay, what is unique about your profile? Of course your business is unique. I would never assume your business is like my business. How can we account for the variance of your terminology or your grammar and your style rules, right? Then we start building the conversation about their profiles, their rule sets, and what they want to monitor. And it's only at the last stage do we actually do that authoring level integration to say now that we understand the rules are appropriate, they're monitoring the correct things, we've ensured the scope of your content, now we're going to put it to the level that it enables your writers to take action on that as part of their cycle. So that's a little bit backwards from maybe like the traditional approach would be, but it really enables us to have success in onboarding those different enterprise teams quite quickly. So our current state of Acrolinx after, again, this was only 1 year. We built our SDK last year. We're integrating it. We're moving forward with it, is we've definitely enabled our writing teams in the scope of scan that we're doing across the content and that we're doing nearly all content. We've empowered them with the data. We've put the analytics and the reporting at their fingertips so they can take action on it, both the authors and the managers. And we think we're enriching the customer experience through additional business capabilities of things like the tone report and liveliness and informality. We know we really want to evolve our customer experience. And traditionally, we would have sat all our editors in a room together and we would have said, come up with a new editorial tone strategy, come up with a new voice strategy. And they just would have, done some research or taken a look at it and come up with some guidelines and tested them in the market. But now we're actually using the Acrolinx data to drive our strategy, to evolve it, and to help us change our own behavior. We think that's directly impacting our customers' engagement and satisfaction with our content. Just to briefly focus in the last 5 minutes on the goals about where we're headed this next year, in addition to spanning out and onboarding different additional enterprise teams, we also want to implement self-service management for the profiles. As I mentioned, that terminology, that rule set is a living document, and I don't want to be a bottleneck to that rule set. If we have 4 different enterprise teams contributing and wanting to adjust the terminology, I want them to have the power to do that. So what we've set up is what we call our core rule set. Maybe 80% of the rules are consistent across all of the different enterprise teams, and there's variance across here and there. We really want to enable them to add and select and to choose and to build their own profiles. So that's a program we've started this year, and we're working with the Acrolinx team to best enable that in a self-service manner through the admin console. We also, because I said I'm a control freak, I like to rule with an iron fist, we're going to start gating check-ins based on Acrolinx quality scores. So this will be different across different levels of content, but the most obvious one you can think of is imagine the UI strings. If there's a string in the UI that has a spelling error, you can't check it in. I won't let you, it will fail an Acrolinx check, it won't get promoted into the main build, it won't get built in, it'll kick back to you, right? That's one way that we're making sure that bad quality doesn't come into our process. So we're thinking of starting there and evolving that, and that'll be based on content maturity. Maybe it's based on flagship, right? How important is this product to you versus an incubating product? What's your customer base, right? I think that allows for flexibility in your business process according to the different various products you have and where they sit in your enterprise. And then the last piece is how we use the Acrolinx data to enable business insights going forward. And so this one is really important to me when we talk about data, because as I said, I have to report out numbers, all things are numbers. But numbers to what end? What is the business value? How do you connect a number to enabling sales? How do you connect a number to deflecting support calls, right? So what we're doing, a few things, is one, across the enterprise, Acrolinx being very quantitative, having a particular number has enabled us to kick off in our Enterprise Content Council a content metrics and a content performance program. So what we got together across the enterprise and said, these are the things we're agreeing to measure. And stage 1 of this is, do you measure it? Red or green? If you have a capability to measure this thing, whatever it is, we'll give you a green on it. So for measuring the content usage, that's your web analytics, right? Maybe it's video impressions, page views, whatever it is that you're measuring. CSAT, upvotes, stars, helpfulness ratings, surveys, whatever your mechanism for judging content value. Content quality, I have that. And guess what? The 4 other business units I support have that too, right? When we talk to other teams across the organization, they have no single metric to report out how they understand the quality of their content. And then freshness, right? Is it when was it updated? We also use Acrolinx data and insights to help us judge when content was last touched, when it was last run through an Acrolinx scan, when it was last updated, in addition to if it adheres to our end-of-life policies and processes. And then last piece we measure is our responsiveness, and that could be to customer feedback. Like the Workday team said that they're able to take a lot of action on their customer feedback. It could be, mean time to closure for your bugs. It could be your closure rate, that you're closing 80%, 50%, whatever your target is. So we're on stage 1 right now, talking across the enterprise to our marketing teams, to our support teams, about all of us aligning on these exact KPIs and these exact areas to measure. What we hope to head to is being able to set benchmarks. And again, Acrolinx, we think, is leading the way of content quality in that there are established benchmarks. So when we look at the quality scores for docs, if you're in the technical documentation space, 80, right, is typically the industry average for what is good quality content. If you're focused on the UI strings, it's much higher. It's 95. It needs to be your quality score to be considered good quality string content. So we're able to use that to report out what is our quality metric. And then the last piece that we're using Acrolinx for, as I said, enabling business insights and really focusing on data, is Acrolinx is one piece that we feed into our Hadoop cluster to do big data analysis on. Right now, we're looking for correlations. If we increase our Acrolinx score, what will that do to our customer engagement? If we increase our Acrolinx score, what will that do to deflecting support calls? So we fed Acrolinx data as well as all of our different data points about our web metrics, our volume of content, and the content itself, actually, not just into our Hadoop cluster for the big data analysis, but also we're looking at machine learning capabilities to help us move from that correlation into a causation to say how we can really take action on this. And I just highlighted for you some of the sample business level questions we're asking ourselves. So this, I think, Andrew, maybe speaks to the why. Why are you doing it? What do you hope to accomplish in writing something, even in running the scan on it, even in having a quality process? And so we're hoping that this is our focus this year. We'll end up being able to answer that question, is your content successful? Not all content is equal. And as business leaders, we want to best focus our resources on the content that is most impactful to accomplish our business goals. So eventually we hope to come out with standardized, approved, enterprise-wide content performance metrics, KPIs, and then analysis mechanisms that allow us to process all of our data and make better business decisions. So all of this is to say, as far as implementing Acrolinx across the enterprise, that the scalability, getting a scan of your content is step number one of understanding the landscape, of defining your business goals, of how you're going to use Acrolinx not just to determine the quality of a piece of content, but really to drive your business goals forward. And then also to encourage you to think about Acrolinx not just as far as the quality of the content, but how else could you be using that data as a business enabler within your enterprise to help you better communicate the value of what you do, to help represent the good work that your team is doing, and then, of course, like all of us, to get further resources to be able to do more good work. With more resources, more good work, more is always my strategy. So hopefully these insights kind of speak to some of the problems that you're having in your enterprise as well, but also some of the strategic solutions you might take, that how Acrolinx can be used to transform the scalability and the quality of your content across your enterprise. Thank you.